Hello friends, welcome back to CloudPedagogy. In previous sessions, we have learned what servers are and how they can be implemented in AWS. Also, we have been hearing the word serverless quite a few times. In this lesson, we will be discussing about what is serverless, when to go for serverless, and we will also explore serverless containers with AWS Fargate. So, what is serverless exactly? If you run your code on Amazon EC2, AWS is responsible for the physical hardware and you are responsible for the logical controls such as operating system, security and patching, networking, security and scaling. On the other side, if you run your code in containers on Amazon ECS or Amazon EKS, AWS is responsible for more of the container management such as deploying containers across EC2 instances and managing the container cluster. However, when running ECS and EKS on EC2, you are still responsible for maintaining the underlying EC2 instances. This means that you are responsible for patching your instances when new software packages comes out or when new security updates come out. You are responsible for setting up the scaling of those instances as well as ensuring that you have architected your solutions to be hosted in a highly available manner, which means deploying instances across at least 2 availability zones. This is less management and less operational overhead than you would have if you hosted the same solutions on premises. But management processes will still need to be in place and it's your responsibility to create those processes to fit your specific use case. This is actually really great and in many cases exactly what you want because it gives you a great deal of control over your solutions. Whatever happens on your instances and with your instances is in your hands. You can create simple or complicated setups that run and scale on AWS exactly to your specifications. That being said, not every single solution requires this level of control over the environment. Often sometimes you might be looking to focus on your own business solutions and let somebody else take care of the undifferentiated heavy lifting for you. Or perhaps you just simply don't want to fiddle around with scaling controls and fault tolerance designs, but you still want all the benefits of doing so. This is where the term serverless comes in. A lot of AWS services are serverless in nature. Serverless means that you cannot see or access the underlying infrastructure or instances that are hosting your solution. Instead, the management of the underlying environment from a provisioning, scaling, fault tolerance and maintenance perspective is taken care of for you. All you need to do is focus on your application. The rest of them taken care of, or more accurately, the rest is abstracted from you. This means that serverless offerings are very convenient to use. You get to focus on the value of the service and what that service delivers and not the underlying implementation details, thus reducing the number of operational support processes that you need to have in place. Remember the shared responsibility model that we had covered in the earlier lesson. This idea of serverless impacts that as well. If you want to deploy your workloads and applications without having to manage any EC2 instances, you can do that on AWS with serverless compute, which removes the undifferentiated heavy lifting for you. So you got to understand what is serverless. But how do you know when to go for serverless services? Every definition of serverless mentions 4 aspects. No servers to provision or manage. Scale with usage. You never pay for idle resources. Availability and fault tolerance are built in. So with serverless, spend time on the things that differentiate your application rather than spending time on ensuring availability, scaling and managing servers. So for example, with Amazon EC2 instances, you are required to patch the operating system and security updates as they are released. With serverless offerings, the line between what you are responsible for versus what AWS is responsible for moves up. You do not have access to the underlying operating system that is running the service. Therefore, you are not responsible for carrying out tasks like patching. You are, however, still responsible for things like data encryption and access management. AWS has several serverless compute options, including AWS Fargate and AWS Lambda. Now we'll try to explore serverless containers with AWS Fargate. AWS Fargate, which we mentioned briefly earlier, is a serverless compute platform that you can run either ECS or EKS on top of. Amazon ECS and Amazon EKS enable you to run your containers in two modes. The one is Amazon EC2 mode, the other one is AWS Fargate mode. Previously, you learned that ECS and EKS run on clusters of EC2 instances. And in that case, you are using EC2 as the compute platform for your containers, and you also have tight control over those instances. With AWS Fargate as the compute platform, you run your containers on a managed serverless compute platform. AWS Fargate is a purpose-built serverless compute engine for containers. Fargate scales and manages the infrastructure, allowing developers to work on what they do best, like application development. The scaling and fault tolerance is built in, and you don't need to worry about the underlying operating system or the environment. Instead, you just define your container, how you want your container to be run, and then it scales on demand. It achieves this by allocating the right amount of compute, eliminating the need to choose and handle EC2 instances and cluster capacity and scaling. Fargate supports both Amazon ECS and Amazon EKS architecture and provides workload isolation and improved security by design. AWS Fargate abstracts the EC2 instance, so you are not required to manage it. However, with AWS Fargate, you can use all the same ECS primitives, APIs, and AWS integrations. It natively integrates with AWS Identity and Access Management, which is IAM, and Amazon Virtual Private Cloud, which is VPC. Having native integration with Amazon VPC allows you to launch Fargate containers inside your network and control connectivity to your applications. Alright, let's wrap this up. I like to think of AWS services as existing on a spectrum. On one side of the spectrum, you have convenience, and on the other side, you have control. Many services exist to give you control like Amazon EC2, whereas other services exist to give you convenience like the container hosting platform Fargate and the serverless compute AWS Lambda. I hope this is useful and helpful for you. When you are ready, please join me in the next lecture. Until then, take care.